So hey guys, welcome to the Crazy Juicy Love podcast, and I have a real special guest. I have Marrisa Moore. She's a psychotherapist with Therapy Brooklyn, and I'm so excited to have her.
Me too.
Being on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yes. So please tell me how you even got into your career and how did Therapy Brooklyn evolved and like what's your stance with Therapy Brooklyn in Brooklyn. So I remember in the conversation that I want people to know like your passion behind that.
Yeah, I would love to share. So maybe I can tell you a little bit about what Therapy Brooklyn is first. So Therapy Brooklyn is comprised of myself, and we have 3 clinicians on staff. And what we really do is we offer therapy, both individual, family, and couples therapy. We really try to meet the needs of people in the Brooklyn area. We're located in Greenpoint, but we serve like everybody. We have even people coming in from Manhattan, Long Island, Staten Island. And I think it's because we're really rooted in seeing people as whole people, seeing people as their strengths, right? Not really being so saturated in what the problem is, but just thinking about, well, how can we help you access that strength that you have within? And I think people are really drawn to that. And so I really love doing what I do, because I think it's like I get to not only have this practice, but support up and coming clinicians in developing their voice as therapists. So that's a little bit about what Therapy Brooklyn is and what we offer.
And how did you even did you always know that you want to be a therapist? Like how did it even for you?
Sometimes when I think about this, I'm like, oh, did it start in school or did it start even earlier? Because I was actually thinking about it this morning that I think it started when I was a kid. Like I was a little bit shy, but I was shy in the way that I was like always watching and always listening. I was so curious about the world around me. And I think like those are really the foundational pieces of being a therapist and being a coach, right? You really have to be listening and curious. And that was something like I developed over time because I was so shy. I really felt comfortable sitting back, but also taking in the world around me. And so I think that was something that I just developed over time and learned to kind of hone that skill through going to school and learning about it. And then I think once I got to college and started taking psychology classes, I was like, oh wow, this is the stuff right here. This is the stuff that I can use those skills and actually make it a profession. And so I think it just started with just my kind of natural way of being in the world when I was younger.
Right. Wow. And what is the difference you're hoping to make with people with what you do in your work and your company?
Yeah, well, I think that's like a big question. But I think, my favorite thing to do is couples therapy. And so when when you said difference, I think the difference that I want to make with couples is really getting the power of being fully seen by your partner. Fully because when you're fully seen and supported by somebody, it feels like you can do anything, right? And so that's like what I want to be able to offer people, the possibility of really seeing each other fully in their best selves with their best intentions so that they can really go out there and conquer the world. And so that's like my ultimate hope, right? Yeah. That people can in relationships see each other more clearly, see each other for the best of who they are, and really supporting each other in meeting the goals that they want for themselves and others.
Right. And I really, really love what you're saying. And I thought there, about couples being really fully seen, is in some of my recent interactions with not couples together, but, both hands, like working with a man, working with a woman. And I often hear, as particularly men have a hard time hearing what their partner is saying, and not really getting, and they're asserting, and I'm asking this question based off my barber. He's in a relationship.
Yeah.
One of the things his girlfriends keep saying to him is saying, "Why don't you ask? Don't assume. Like you already have this assertion of what I'm going to say, and it's not really correct." So, talk about help me or help men and people and couples in particular. why is it so hard, or people that aren't aware of, like, they aren't really listening? There's a difference
Right.
between listening and getting
Yeah.
a partner.
And that is actually the biggest communication trap that couples fall into. Everybody does it. I'm guilty of it too,
Right.
actually, right? You're not listening, right? Or you're listening already from the place of anticipating what the other person is going to say, right?
Mm,
And this can happen for couples that have been together for a while or even just a short time. You're already pegged the person as, you are this, so I'm going to listen to you as that thing that I think you are, right? And
yes.
so if I experience my partner as not making enough time for me, right? Then I'm already listening to him from that ear, right? So if
Mm.
he says, "Oh, I have this thing to do after work," I'm like, "Oh, see, you're not making time for me," right?
Yes.
What I don't hear him say is, "Oh, but I planned this getaway for us this weekend," right? Because I'm already listening from, he doesn't make time, right? And so I
Yes.
think it's like we get stuck in that, men, women, because we already are anticipating what our partner is going to say, and we're attached to the stories that we have of who they
Hmm.
are, right? And that's where I think people get really tripped up and stuck,
Right.
not listening. Yeah.
And so, how, when a couple comes in, how do you work with them and teach them to really hear what they're saying and not anticipate what they're saying?
Yeah. So I think first I say awareness is key, right? Because awareness leads to a new possibility of a different action. And so
Mhm.
first I think I have to get couples to get aware and acknowledge probably 90% of the time you're not really listening.
Right.
But that's also human and that's okay, right? Because
Right.
I'm all about not making people wrong, right? Like also because we're all human, we might make mistakes and that's okay. But it's like, how can you hold each other when you slip up in these ways,
Hmm.
right? How can you catch yourself to say, you know what? I really wasn't listening. I was listening with this ear to who I
Hmm.
think you are, rather than this other ear of who you see yourself as, and
Hmm.
who like this larger story of you. And so what I tell couples is, first of all, be aware of that and then take an important pause. Sometimes when you're like fighting to speak, how
Hmm.
can, instead of speaking right away, taking a breath, like a moment
Right.
to say like breath is really powerful. I invite
Right.
everybody to do it.
Yeah, I do
Um,
too. Yeah.
yeah. And then here's another big thing is, how can you, if you find yourself already about to make a statement about that part or your partner, or you're going to like fight to say something, how can you bring curiosity instead? How can you
Mm.
actually ask it as a question, right? So if I have an accusation and I say, you don't make time for me, right? That can just make the argument go off, right?
Right. Yes.
And so another way to listen is actually by inviting curiosity in that moment.
Mm.
Say, oh, I'm already going to say something. I'm ready going to say something, and inviting yourself to ask it as a question instead, because
Mm.
that actually expands your listening and allows your partner to share more rather than getting them like stuck in one way.
Mm. And I really love that what you just said too. Like, take a breath
Yeah.
before you react, because that's something I was watching the Red Table by Jada Pickett Smith, and they were talking about their
Great.
relationship.
Yeah.
And one of the things he said, now I don't know why, when he said that, what exactly what you're saying, he said, you know, before she or both of them came at each other with something, they would
Mhm.
take a moment before they react. And then they had this thing where they would say, it was a communication thing that they established between each other. And I was like, that is so good.
Yeah.
And then I'm curious of, do you have couples do this? And they made a commitment that if they were not in a place to um, be calm and communicate, that they would say, I can't communicate to you right now. I'm really pissed. I'm going to
Mhm.
walk away. I'm going to get myself together. And then I'm going to come back to you and have this communication.
Yes, yes, that is actually really essential, and it's okay, right? Sometimes couples think, okay, if something's getting activated now, we have to figure it out. We just have to
Right.
stay in it. And that actually can not help the situation, right? So but I think what you said is important, because you're not just leaving the room. You're not just saying, I need a break and then bolting. You're
Right.
actually recognizing where you're at first, right? Like, I'm getting activated. I don't know if this is going to go anywhere. I'm going to take a pause, but I'll be back, right? You're not just like
Hmm.
leaving and slamming the door, because that's
Right.
actually not taking a pause. That's kind of some that's sending a message to your partner.
And also it can be a trigger, especially if somebody has some abandonment issues. They
Exactly.
can like just it can
Yeah.
escalate the whole
Right, because then
situation.
they can follow you, they can bang on the door, and then you're off, right? And so I think like taking a pause is important as long as you make a commitment to come back together. And that can
Mm,
be later that evening, that can be tomorrow morning, but as long as there's a commitment of I'm taking a pause, here's why, and I'll check back in with you then. And also here's an important question, how is that for you, right? Does that work for
mm,
you? Because then you're also checking in. You're not just making this unilateral decision, I'm out, I can't. You're saying,
right.
this is what I need. What about you?
Wow, that's really beautiful. And like it's not, it's like a continuation, a continuous flow of the
Mm-hmm.
conversation. And it's like I'm making a commitment to come back to you. I'm not just leaving you high and dry.
Exactly.
Um, and and then that's like real, I don't say real, but I guess real communication, real partnership. You're really establishing this partnership and dynamic with each other of how you communicate. And I
Mm-hmm.
really love that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's that establishes trust too,
Mhm.
connection. Yeah.
So how does the past influence the way couples interact?
Oh
Like
man.
how
A lot. Oh,
can
it sure does.
But because a lot of couples don't realize that that's what's happening,
Right.
and they bring in that on top of their
Mm-hmm.
relationship.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, and I always tell couples to visualize it. Like if you can picture yourself in a room with your partner, that room is so crowded, right? It's not just you two, it's your family, it's your friends, it's societal expectations, it's what happened for yesterday, it's your work, it's like it's everything, right? So it's like, and I think that visualization can help because it's just like, wow, you're in this room together, but there are so many factors that are then shaping how you're interacting, how you're relating to one another. And I think the biggest thing to point to first is what are the models that you had growing up of relationships, right? This
Mm,
could be from the people that raised
mm,
you, this can be from early relationships early on, it can be from all those things, right? Because I think what you absorbed as a child can really inform who you pick as a partner, right? What
yes.
you're used to. So, for me, I grew up in a home where my parents fought a lot. Like they communicated and they communicated loudly, right? And so for me, I had this sense of like, ooh, relationships are tension. Like that's what relationships should
Yes.
look like. Oh, if it's like calm, I'm like, what is this? Is this how we're supposed to,
Right.
And so that's like a big thing because you often gravitate towards the familiar. And
Mm,
so, and you can find yourself playing a role that you witnessed. And so that's why it's really important to understand that past because it
mhm,
doesn't mean that you're condemned to it, but understanding it can then allow for other ways of being to say, this is what I was taught, but is that actually what I want to continue? Just
right.
because it's familiar doesn't mean it's good, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's so interesting too, because I was recently in a relationship where everything was really going great, and he wasn't used to everything going great because I grew up in a house where there wasn't really many arguments, but people didn't really fully self-express themselves, I would say. So that was
Hmm.
one of my commitments to from this forward on. I was like, okay, I'm going to be fully self-expressed in my love, and I want that partner to be the same with me. And
Yeah.
he was not used to that, and I could tell. And he would often say, why are you so good to me? Why is it so
Yeah.
perfect? Why we don't fight? And when I really dug a little deeper, it was because of his past relationship that the guy
Hmm.
always like cause upsets, cause angers, cause all these things.
Yeah.
He was so used to that. So when he met somebody like me, he was like, this feels weird. Like
Right.
we should be fighting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
a lot of people don't realize that it can be another way.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So
Right.
how do you begin to shift that within couples that there can be another way?
Right.
How do you move them from, because that's an old pattern of beliefs and standards that they unconsciously agreed to, and
Right.
now they're bringing it to that relationship. How do
Mhm.
you navigate that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think a big thing is just first Awareness. Like I said this before,
Right.
awareness, 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 right? Like recognizing that link, because like you said, a lot of people are surprised by, oh, the past informs the present, right? They're like, oh, whatever that happened years ago, it doesn't matter. And then
Mm-hmm.
just first being present to, oh, it does matter, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't lock you into a fixed way of being. And so what I first ask couples to do is share and talk about their family history, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because in talking about it, they can get a better understanding of where each of them came from, right? So
Right.
like your partner, it seems like there was something like when they shared more, you got a sense of, oh, this is what it means for us,
Right.
right? And so first, what I invite couples to do is to share a little bit more about their family history. What are some of the ways they watch their parents or their caregivers interact? What are some of the ways that they bring into this relationship? And
Mm.
also, this is what I'll ask them: what do they want to keep, and what do they want to let go of? And
Mm.
recognizing that we can't just put it was all bad, I'm going to leave it in the past, but actually maybe there are some things that your parents or your early models for relationships did teach you that you want to keep,
Right.
and then others what you want to let go of. And just
Right.
even recognizing and doing that, it kind of almost like a ritual to say, well, this is what I want to take on, and this is what I want to let go.
And that's so good because in the calling in one coaching, that's what we do too. So why is it
Yeah.
important, like saying that what do you want to keep and what do you want to let go of?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's because, well, the main reason why it's important is because it puts you back in the driver's seat and it shows you that you actually have the power, right?
Yes.
Power is essential because sometimes people feel like ruled by the past, like, okay, well, this happened and it's always going to be this way.
Mm-hmm.
And then so when you say you can keep and when you can let go, I think it actually gives power back to say, oh, wait, you get to decide,
Right.
right? And so that's I think an essential thing. And I think the piece about keeping is recognizing that there are always gifts, right? There are always
Mm.
things or little nuggets or little things that you can still take from a situation. And I think being able to look for those is really important,
Right.
right? To find the silver lining and to not then like villainize people or see things as all bad, right? Because if I were to say, well, my parents, fought a lot and that's all terrible, then that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't allow me to see them as full people and to see also
Right.
the possibilities of their relationship, right? So
Right.
I have to also look for things that they taught me that I do bring to my relationship that are actually really helpful.
Right. I love that.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about, particularly men. I know we talked about this podcast called Where Do We Begin?
Yeah.
And I was sharing with you how a lot of men struggle with articulating what's going on inside, which I
Hmm.
see that directly affects relationship because I hear the women like, "What's going on? Tell me what's going on. Share what's me inside." So, you know, um, and I want to give men power and show them like, that they can like. Well, first of all, sharing yourself is not weak. It's actually communicating and
Exactly.
establishing a really healthy bond with your partner. You
Hmm.
know, um, well, when in your experience, why do men struggle, and how can we empower men to overcome those things, or some tools that you can share? Oh no.
Hmm.
Hello.
Yes. Hi.
Hi.
Are you
Did
there?
it? Yeah, I'm here. It froze a little bit. Do you see? Okay, it's good now.
Yeah, I think it froze a little bit, and you were asking such an amazing question about men, and I think I lost a little bit of it.
Oh, I was okay. So I was saying that I see a lot of men struggle in their communication, and a lot of men don't want to share, and men think that sharing their feelings is a weakness. When actually it's a power. It's actually
Hmm.
helping you establish this bond and communication with your partner. So just
Hmm.
wondering, like, with your experience, like, why do men struggle, and how can we empower men and show that this is actually a really powerful tool to really have this amazing connection with your partner?
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's so true about men really struggling, and I want to make sure to speak like sometimes I want to make sure that I'm speaking to the men that I've encountered in my life and the men that I've encountered in my practice, recognizing that there are a lot of similarities and differences in terms of how men relate to their emotions. But I think by and large, men do struggle with vulnerability, right? And I think that is largely informed by the fact of like society doesn't allow men to express
Right.
themselves, right? Like you said, it's like men are so quick to be seen as like weak or not enough if they show any side of vulnerability, of like of sadness, of hurt, of shame. And instead, I think what they get is like this like macho anger, right? Things like that. But
Yeah.
I think it's really the sense of what expectations are placed of them, and how like boys are also socialized early on. And so I think that's why it's so important for men to be able to tap into those emotions and have them be okay, because I think really what women are craving from men is that emotional availability, right? Like they both want them to be there and present, and but also I would encourage men to see themselves as providers of not just like, I know that men want to be providers of like the home and the financial,
Right.
but you can also be an emotional provider. Like
Yeah.
women are craving that, right?
Yeah.
So it's so important.
You know, I was at a wedding and I met this guy and I we connected so much. He was a straight guy and like hit it off so well and really talked about these really deep things. He talked to me about his vasectomy and like and he told me that his kids know about his operation. And I
Mhm.
said, wow, like I've never met a man, but it's so often not so often that I meet men
Yeah.
that will actually share the operation, what it is, the procedure, how show his kids how to take care of me. And you know, and I forgot he said, you know, his kids goes, how is your buddy? Like they call it his buddy. And he's like, buddy is doing good today. And I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, like why are you so open about yourself? Like at this such a vulnerable place. He said, you know, I really realized that as a man that's what was missing in my relationship with my father, and I did not want to have that, and it kept a distance from me
Mhm.
and my father. He said I wanted to bring that to my kids, and their kids are like so well behaved, so like emotional,
Mhm.
like self-expressed, and even him and his wife are very open and about their relationship. Didn't really hide anything, and even when people like saw me him talking, they were like, "Wow, how long you guys known each other?" Like we just met, and we had really really deep conversations. And I didn't see, for me, I guess, I didn't see him any less. I just saw him as this like really whole person. I was
Yeah.
like, wow, like and I told him, I said, no, you are an example of like real strength and like not only strength but vulnerability, like just being
Mhm.
whole. And he was like, that is what I'm striving, that is what I want to teach my kids, and especially my son. He said, I'm doing this for my son. And I was like, wow, that is amazing. I wish more men were like that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
um so what are some like I guess communication tips that you teach, other than like just being aware and what do you want to give up and take
Yeah.
and keep, like that couples can start utilizing now in order to communicate more effectively?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think a big thing that I do with couples is I invite them to know their cycle. And really what that means is that like everything is like this kind of circle, right? There's not one
Mm-hmm.
person to blame, but you're always reacting off of each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that like is really important, because like if you are reacting to something that the other partner is doing, then you're going to get a reaction back, and just like noticing that back and forth nature, that it's not often just like one person, that it's a cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And within the possibility of a cycle, there's always like a way to like several opportunities to break it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think what I invite couples to do, I think we talked about this earlier, is one, the important pause button, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
just taking a breath and saying like, I'm going to check in with what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And actually what I'll invite couples to do is like when they're taking that pause to reorient themselves, to like ask themselves this question: what is it that we're really talking about right now? And
Mm-hmm.
what is it that we hope for in this conversation?
Mm-hmm.
Right? To actually ask themselves that question, because then it can serve to reorganize the entire conversation. Because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes what happens with couples is that you'll have a moment of reactivity, right? Say it was some disagreement about dinner, and then that disagreement then opens up to something that happened last week. It opens up to something that happened last year. It opens up to this like bigger thing of like, you never do this. And then like all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I thought we were just trying to negotiate who's going to cut this and who's going to do that. And so
Right.
taking a pause and saying, wait a minute, what is it that we're actually talking about it? And what is it we hope for this conversation can
Mm-hmm.
help like provide a little bit of a container around it, right? So that you're
Right.
tackling that thing at hand rather than all the other things that you want to pile onto it, right? Because it can become like a pile on effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I invite them to do, to take that pause so they can ask themselves these like grounding questions to say, what is it that we hope for in this conversation,
Right.
right?
Mm.
And then another thing about, I think we talked about this earlier, inviting curiosity, right?
Mm.
When you want to make a statement about your partner or declare something about who you think they are, can you ask that and be curious instead, right? That's
Right.
another thing.
Um, I'm curious of like, how do you use these tools in your current relationship, and how, uh, or in
Yeah,
your past, like,
yeah, yeah. Well, so I mean, I think I always, I like say this all the time to couples, is that I am also not perfect, and I don't expect myself to be that.
Mhm.
Although like I'm deeply in this work, I teach it. Sometimes like we can't always use the tools that we know,
Right.
right? And so I think for me, like I can get really like activated pretty
Mhm.
easily. Like, I'm fiery, I'm an Aries. And so like I tend to like, I'm really like usually mellow, but then if I like feel slighted anyway, I react, right? Instead of going to that place of just taking a pause, I'll react first, I'll say something, and then I'll be like, okay, wait a minute. Maybe I should take that back, or maybe I should explain it. And so I think this is something I didn't say about communication, that it's also okay to have a do-over, right?
Mm.
And to like say, like the other day, I think I made a judgment of my partner around like, it was really like a question of like, are you going to eat that? Are you going to do it? And it was just like so judgmental. And it really wasn't speaking to all the things that I was actually wanting to say to him. And so I actually like approached him and I was like, actually, I'm sorry I said that. Really what I meant is I wanted to check in with you. And I actually wanted to connect. And that was really not the way to do it. So
Mm.
actually knowing that you can start off on the wrong footing and then you can right yourself, right? Like as
Right.
long as you are able to acknowledge it, particularly acknowledging the impact on the other, to say, I know that may have hurt, or that maybe didn't feel good. I
Mm.
want to make space to hear how that felt for you. And I also want to let you know what was going on for me. So recognizing that you can like, that fire can come out, but you can
Mm.
also do things to put out that fire.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
I really love that do-over, because I think
Mhm.
often in relationships, you know, the the person who's making the accusation wants to like put their foot down and like
Yeah.
they're done, and like that's it.
Yeah.
You're really leaving your partner with some muck, and then now they're carrying it around, and now they're like sort of, you both are shifting and being careful in your relationship.
Hmm.
And that is really beautiful, that what you just demonstrated,
Hmm.
just to know that I can do this over, and I get to say how this goes, and not like be in this sort of like disarray, because actuality, those moments, those unmissed do-over moments build up.
Right.
Because I know for me in my first relationship, I didn't make those do-overs, and they built up so much that they ended up in explosions.
Right. Right.
And often couples don't realize that they can do what you just did. You just demonstrated, like, I want to do this over, because I think and one of the things I've learned for myself in relationships, that if my partner is reacting to what I'm saying, I'm doing something or saying something that's causing that, and then I can stop and be in
Right.
inquiry what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, okay, what I'm saying is actually upsetting, or maybe it's
Yeah.
being miscommunicated, or maybe they're
Right.
hearing me differently. My intention was this, and they think that is that, and that's really, I really love what you're.
Yeah, and I would say too that it's all about like when I say do over too, it's about repair, right?
Right,
Knowing that there's always some kind of like miscommunication or rupture, and opening up the space for repair, right?
right,
It's both on the person that maybe said the wrong thing, but your partner, even though they may feel hurt, right? They also have to open up that space for repair. They can't
hmm,
go to, well, you said this thing to me and you're wrong. It's like, wait a minute. You
right,
have to also be available to repairing it,
right,
and making space for it is important.
right. So how important are boundaries in relationships? Are they good or bad? Because you know, I hear people fight about there's no boundaries, but boundaries can actually be helpful. And how?
Yeah, boundaries I think are incredibly important, right? Um I think it's everybody has their individual sense of what is too much or too little
Right.
boundaries, but I think having boundaries are healthy because what it means is that you are able to like declare what's okay and not okay for you, right? And
Mm,
so I think it's important and there can be boundaries around many things. There can be boundaries around time, right? There can be boundaries around like space. There can be boundaries around intimacy, and I think having those is really important because you're like you're letting your partner know what's important to you.
mm,
And I think there's also the sense of what is learned from respect of boundaries, right?
hmm,
Like, do you have a partner that trespasses your boundaries?
right.
Do you, when your partner pushes against them, do you let them go, right?
Mm.
And so that's all important information.
Yeah, man, I've recently learned that I didn't set any boundaries in any of my relationships,
Yeah.
and in particular, and some of my friendships, and I had, allowing one particular relationship. I used to always complain about my mother, and I used to we used to both complain about our mothers, and I never knew why I felt so exhausted.
Yeah.
And I was like, and then one of my coach, he was like, you don't set we discovered that I don't set boundaries, and that's why I felt so draining. And
Hmm.
I kind of saw, like, in every single relationship, like, oh, I never set boundaries. And when I started to set this boundary with my friend, like, it was very uncomfortable.
Hmm.
However, it was much needed, and it actually was awkward in the beginning, but it really shifted the way our dynamic was together, because it was off the table. That subject of complaining, because I realized that complaining and, I guess, gossiping about our parents was not one doing us any service,
Hmm.
and it was just really, for me, it was really draining on my side. So I really
Yeah.
took on boundaries. Boundaries are actually, I love setting boundaries now, and I'm learning how to do that more and more.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
So there was something on your website I really loved, and and it said something about. Well, my question is, well, how do you help couples find their way back to love? Because and where do we begin on the podcast? A lot of the couples are almost at the end of their
Yeah.
relationship, and so how do you even begin
Yeah.
to help couples
Yeah.
start?
And yeah, that's like a huge question. I think first of all, I acknowledge them for coming in, right? Because even taking the step to start coaching or therapy is important, right? And I think one way back to love is hope, right? And really leaning on the possibility that it's there, right?
Hmm.
And so one thing that I'll do with couples in the beginning is really do this visualization, right? And I'll invite them maybe even to reflect or to close their eyes, and to, you know, when they close their eyes and they see this pathway,
Mm-hmm.
and at the end of the pathway is love, right? Love between
Mm-hmm.
them, love in this partnership.
Yeah.
And then I invite them to talk about, well, what do they see? If they were
Mm-hmm.
really to take some space to visualize that path, what does it look like, right? Is it like bright and open and like a clear pathway? Are there obstacles? What do you see? Is it like this dark path with like weeds and forest? And so like even getting to that space of looking at that pathway is important, because then it's all information, right? So if
Mm-hmm.
somebody visualizes this forest that they can't see, then we talk about, well, what are the trees, right? And maybe the trees are past hurt that they need to talk about in order to get that love, right? When they envision the end, what's there, right? So really kind of like getting in the space of seeing what's possible for them, so that they can then take the steps to get to what's
Mm.
possible. So that visualization can really be key, because then it's also information for each other to say, oh, well, how come I see a forest and you see a bright green path? You know, how did that get to be that we're in such different places? So that's something that I invite them to do when they try to regain love. Oh, and an important thing too is also to recognize that I think a lot of couples think about the love that they had in the beginning, and they're like, if only we can get to that place, like we just want that love that we had. And actually recognizing that you may not have that love that you had, and that's actually okay,
Right.
because the hope for couples is that they continue to grow and evolve, right? And as you're growing and evolving, your love is evolving and changing.
Right.
And so actually you're not trying to get what you had, but you're trying to create from this place a new love that you're going to build to,
Yes.
right? So not trying to recapture, it has to be like this, because really you're not the same person that you were hopefully 5 years
Yes.
ago, 10 years ago. So your love is not going to be the same.
Right. And it's so awesome that you just said that, because when I hear couples say that, I automatically say, well, you've missed the growth that they've grown into to who they are right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and you've missed how your love has grown right now, because you're holding your partner to the standard that when you first got together, which you have grown and evolved. And I find often when couples say that, well, you used to be that way, it's actually like a dig. And I,
Mm-hmm.
especially with men, I know a couple in particular, he shuts down. He goes, well, I tried. Like,
Yeah.
nothing I do is good enough. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, you're actually missing the opportunities of growth in the relationship.
Right.
And yeah, and it's like, going back to what you were saying, like the bringing the awareness to relationship can really open up a lot to where have you grown, what have you
Mm-hmm.
learned, where are we now, and possibly where are we going.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So we're coming to the end, and I have a couple
Mhm.
quick questions, and
Yeah.
just tell me what comes to mind. So what does a life of love mean to you?
Oh, I love that question. What does a life of love mean to me? Oh, you know, when I thought about that, I just thought about like this sense of a full heart and freedom,
Hmm.
right? Freedom to be, freedom to grow, freedom to expand. And a life of love also means that it's all around me, right? Like that it's not just something that I'm creating with my partner, but that it's like what I'm living and breathing and being. And
Hmm.
that's like in the care that I bring to my relationships, to how I walk down the street, how I, you know. And so I think when I thought of that, immediately I thought of just like fullness and freedom.
Mm. And so I know you talked about visualization. So when
Mm-hmm.
you visualize love and that path, like what comes to mind when you visualize love?
Yeah. I see, oh, let's see, what do I see? I love nature. And
Mm.
so, and I love the water. And so I guess when I would see it, I see like this like large, lush trees, like
Mm.
this like calm, still water.
Mm.
So, um, and then I guess like there's like the stillness, but then there's also like play and fun, right? Because
Mm.
when I think
Oh.
of love, I think of like it doesn't have to be this like exciting, all, you know,
Hmm.
passionate all the time, but also like stillness is love, right? Where you can just be, but you can also be like all these exciting things. So it's like, in my vision of love, it's like this calm, still waters, like you're looking out, and in the back there's like this like fun like happening, right? So you can both be still and like in the fun.
And how do you get out of your own way as a therapist?
How do I get out of my own way? I have a lot of people that I rely on and support me, right? So I think like for therapists, like what's really important is getting supervision, like just having people that you can talk to and talk like through, like not just the people, like the clients that you're working with, but just your stuff that can come up, right? Because I think ways that therapists get in their own way is like they let their stuff run the show, right? Because we all have stuff. And so if I'm able to talk about that stuff with other people, then that can like be cleared so I don't get in my own way. So I share a lot with those around me, and I talk about what can be coming up or when I get activated. And I think that helps me get out of my own way.
Nice. And if any difference, what does a juicy love life looks like to you?
A juicy love life? It might be still like that beach party that I talked about with the
Beach party.
But I think when I think about a juicy love life, I think of I don't know, laughter.
Yeah.
Laughter.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
That just feels like like if I had that would be like all the time. That's great. Yeah.
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 And what is the secret to therapy that you wish people knew?
The secret to therapy. I wish everybody knew that it's a wonderful gift to give to yourself, right? It's like, and it means that literally that you're giving a gift to yourself. It doesn't mean that you're wrong or that there's something like missing. It's just a gift of space, of being like held and seen and supported. And so that's like kind of like the secret power to it, is that it's giving you a space to heal, to be, to grow, to expand. And why not give that gift to yourself?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And because there's such a stigma, but when you even say the word therapy, like it's like, no, it's like a real gift. It's like, you hire a personal trainer to take care of your body, your physical health. Like, therapy or a coach is just like taking care of your mental state and how you're showing up. And it's a real gift, like you said, to yourself.
Exactly.
To fully whole and complete and be your best self.
Yeah, for sure.
And where can people find you online or social media?
Yeah, so you can find me at therapybrooklyn.com, and very easy to find. That's where I'll be. Yeah, therapybrooklyn.com.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you, Marrisa. I love this whole thing with you, and thank you for being a part of this. And I always have such a great time talking with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.
All right. Bye.